Have you ever felt like something is slipping away from you? Something precious, something you can't quite put your finger on? It's like a shadow lurking in the corners of your mind, waiting to pounce when you least expect it. That's what memory loss feels like, a silent thief, stealing your most cherished moments, your sharpest thoughts, your very identity. I'm sharing this story because I know what it's like to feel that fear, that helplessness. But more importantly, I know how to fight back. This isn't just a tale of horror. It's a journey of rediscovery, a path to reclaiming what was almost lost. And if you're listening, it's because you or someone you love might be facing the same battle. So, let's embark on this journey together. Let's uncover the secrets to sharpening your mind after 60, and let's do it before the silent thief takes any more from you. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind where the world feels softer, as if it's giving you a moment to breathe. I sat in my favorite armchair, its faded green cushions molding to my shape after years of loyalty. A steaming mug of coffee warmed my hands, the rich, earthy scent curling up to meet me. For a fleeting second, everything was right, until I reached for my keys. They weren't on the hook by the door, their usual perch. A flicker of irritation sparked in my chest, but I brushed it aside. Lately, misplacing things had become an unwelcome habit, one I tried to ignore. I rummaged through the living room, lifting cushions and peering under the coffee table. Nothing. The kitchen counter yielded no clues, nor did the bathroom sink where I'd once left my phone. Frustration gnawed at me as I retraced my steps, my mind straining to recall the last time I'd held those keys. Then, on a strange impulse, I opened the refrigerator door. Cold air rushed out, and there they were, my keys, glinting dully beside a carton of milk and a half-eaten sandwich. The metal was icy against my fingers as I pulled them out, disbelief warring with a creeping unease. I forced a laugh, a shaky sound that bounced off the tiled walls. "Silly me," I said aloud, as if saying it would make it true. But the words felt hollow. This wasn't just absent-mindedness. The keys in the refrigerator? That wasn't normal, not for me. I'd always been sharp, the one who remembered birthdays and grocery lists without a second thought. Now, this bizarre lapse stared me down, daring me to dismiss it. I tried to carry on with my day, watering the plants, flipping through the mail, but those keys haunted me. Every glance at the fridge sent a shiver through me, a whisper of something sinister lurking beneath the surface. Was this how it started? A quiet betrayal by my own mind? That night, sleep refused to come. I lay in bed, the room swallowed by shadows, the only sound the relentless tick-tick-tick of the clock on the wall. Each second felt like a theft, time slipping through my fingers. My thoughts spiraled, replaying that moment in the kitchen. The cold keys. The forced laugh that didn't reach my eyes. What if this was the first crack in a dam about to burst? What if I began forgetting more? My address, my best friend's name, the smell of rain on a summer afternoon. Memories of others flooded in unbidden. My friend Susan had watched her mother fade into Alzheimer's cruel grip. She told me stories that chilled me to the bone, her mother asking who she was, wandering the streets at night, losing the ability to cook or dress herself. I pictured myself in that fog, a stranger in my own skin, my independence stripped away. The thought clawed at me, a quiet terror that tightened my throat. I wasn't ready to vanish, but lying there, drowning in fear, wouldn't save me. I had to fight. This silent thief, memory loss, dementia, whatever it was, wouldn't take me without a struggle. I needed a plan, a way to sharpen my mind and hold on to who I was. By morning, resolve had replaced despair. I grabbed a notebook, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the blank page. How do you fight something you can't see? Then I remembered my late husband, Robert. Even in his 70s, he'd been a whirlwind of curiosity, reading about ancient history one day, tinkering with electronics the next. He'd always said learning kept him young. Maybe that was my answer. Staying curious, challenging my mind to grow instead of atrophy. I decided to test it. At the library, I picked up a book on quantum physics, a subject so far removed from my everyday life it might as well have been written in another language. The first pages were daunting, filled with terms like quantum entanglement and superposition. My head ached trying to grasp them, but I pressed on. I scribbled notes in the margins, watched documentaries with narrators who made the impossible sound thrilling, and even joined a local science club. The other members, some younger, some older, welcomed my questions, and our discussions lit a spark I hadn't felt in years. And it worked. Slowly, subtly, I noticed a change. The fog that had settled over my thoughts began to lift. I remembered where I'd parked my car without pacing the lot. I recalled the grocer's name, Tom, without hesitation. Learning wasn't just filling my head with facts, it was waking my mind up, sharpening its edges. But it went beyond quantum physics. Embracing curiosity became a way of life. I started asking questions about everything. Why do sparrows flit in such erratic bursts outside my window? What's the story behind that old oak tree down the street? How does coffee go from a bean to this warm comfort in my mug? Each answer led to more questions, a chain reaction of wonder that kept my mind buzzing. It was exhilarating, like rediscovering a part of myself I'd forgotten. I began sharing my journey, first in a small blog, then on a YouTube channel. To my surprise, people connected with it, hundreds, then thousands, all grappling with the same fears I had. Hey, if this story's striking a chord with you, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, I'd say, smiling at the thought of our growing community. We're picking up speed, and I'd love for you to join us. It felt good to reach out, to turn my struggle into something hopeful. Curiosity wasn't just a shield against the silent thief, it was a lifeline. It reminded me that age doesn't define me. My willingness to learn does. Philosophers might argue that memory makes us who we are, but I started to see it differently. If my past fades, I can still build a present worth remembering. I can still grow. So, if you're listening and feeling that same creeping dread, try this. Embrace curiosity. Pick up a book that scares you with its complexity. Ask a question you've never dared to voice. Let your mind stretch. It's the first of 5 powerful ways I found to fight back, and it's stronger than you might think. But my journey didn't end here. In the next chapter, I'll tell you how connection, real, human connection, became my second weapon against the thief lurking in the shadows. The days following my fridge incident melted into a fog of discomfort. I began noticing small, troubling signs, names evaporating mid-sentence, a persistent itch that I'd overlooked something vital. The silent thief, once a vague, distant worry, was no longer content to linger on the edges of my life. It was drawing nearer, hiding in the still moments when I found myself alone. One evening, I stood by the window, gazing as the sun dipped below the treeline, painting long, jagged shadows across the yard. The house felt cavernous, its emptiness pressing against me. Robert had been gone for 3 years, but recently, the loneliness had twisted into something more sinister. I longed for our late-night conversations, his knack for sharpening my ideas, the comfort of his nearness. Without him, the silence was a heavy, choking thing, and in its grip, my mind strayed into treacherous corners. I started to suspect that isolation was nourishing the thief. Perhaps it flourished in the quiet, in the void left by absent voices to tether me to reality. I'd once read that loneliness could hasten cognitive decline, but I dismissed it as an exaggeration. Now, it loomed like a grim prediction. Resolved to resist, I chose to re-engage with the world. I signed up for a book club at the local library, seeking refuge in the comfort of shared narratives. The first meeting was stilted, unfamiliar faces, strained small talk, but then a woman named Clara turned to me with a smile, her eyes creasing with genuine kindness. She asked my opinion on the book, and for the first time in weeks, I felt visible. Clara became my anchor. We met for coffee, strolled through the park, and traded tales of our lives. She, too, had lost her husband, and we connected over the hollow ache of loss. Yet beyond that, she pushed me. We sparred over politics, unraveled movie plots, and chuckled at absurd humor. Each exchange was a flare, rekindling parts of my mind that had dulled. It wasn't only Clara. I began volunteering at a community garden, digging into the earth and swapping stories with other gardeners. The labor, the scent of soil, the easy companionship, it all revived me. I could feel my mind clearing, the haze dissipating with every new bond one forged. But the thief wasn't ready to surrender. One night, after an animated book club session, I came home to find my front door slightly ajar. My pulse raced as I crossed the threshold, the air thick with menace. Nothing was disturbed, yet the intrusion hung heavy. Had I forgotten to lock it? Or worse, had I left it open oblivious? I scoured the house, hands shaking. All was as it should be, but the disquiet clung to me, inescapable. That night, I lay sleepless, the shadows in my room stretching into long, menacing claws. The thief was mocking me, a reminder of its relentless power. The next day, I phoned Clara. Her calm, steady voice soothed me. She proposed I keep a journal to log my days, to pin my memories to paper. I followed her suggestion, scribbling down the ordinary breakfast, chores, chats. It turned into a ritual, a tether to the now. Yet the journal exposed something chilling. Gaps emerged, whole afternoons missing, discussions I couldn't summon. The thief was still there, slinking through the fissures. A cold dread settled over me, as if it were observing, biding its time for the ideal strike. Then one evening, Clara invited me to a dinner party. I wavered, my fears a crushing weight, but she persisted, and I relented. The gathering buzzed with life, laughter, voices overlapping. I met new people, swapped anecdotes, and for a few precious hours, the thief withdrew. Lying in bed that night, a revelation struck me. Connection wasn't merely about breaking the silence. It was about weaving a network of support, a lattice of minds to catch me when mine stumbled. The more I linked myself to others, the more resilient I grew. So, if you sense the shadows of isolation creeping closer, reach out. Join a group, call a friend, lend a hand somewhere. Construct your web of connections and let it ground you. It's the second powerful way to stand against the silent thief. But my struggle wasn't finished. In the next chapter, I'll reveal how movement, both of body and mind, became my third defense against the encroaching dark. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the wooden floor. I stretched my arms, feeling the familiar ache in my joints. At 68, I was still fit enough to move without a cane, but the years had begun to whisper their presence in my bones. My doctor had urged me to exercise daily, claiming it would keep both my body and mind sharp. After weeks of mulling it over, I decided today was the day to take his advice seriously. My usual walks around the neighborhood had grown stale, so I set my sights on a trail through the woods nearby, a path I'd passed countless times, but never dared to explore. It felt like a challenge, a small rebellion against the creeping monotony of age. I laced up my walking shoes, my mind drifting to the strategies I'd already embraced. Curiosity in Chapter 1, connections in Chapter 2. Now, I needed something more tangible, something physical to anchor me. The air hit me with a crisp, pine-scented bite as I stepped onto the trail. Trees loomed overhead, their branches knitting a canopy that filtered the sunlight into a soft, dappled glow. My footsteps fell into a steady rhythm, and for a while, I felt alive, truly alive, my heart pumping, my lungs filling with the earthy scent of the forest. I let myself believe this was the answer. Movement, a way to keep the silent thief of memory at bay. But the path wasn't as straightforward as I'd imagined. It twisted and turned, doubling back on itself like a snake coiling through the underbrush. The trail markers, small wooden posts I'd relied on, vanished, swallowed by the uniformity of the trees. A prickle of unease crawled up my spine. I tried to backtrack, but every step seemed to pull me deeper into the woods, the landscape shifting like a dream I couldn't wake from. The sun climbed higher, its rays slicing through the leaves in jagged beams. Shadows stretched and twisted around me, their shapes unnervingly human. Long arms, bent backs, faces half-formed. My breath quickened, shallow and sharp. I told myself it was nothing, just fatigue playing tricks, but the forest felt alive, watching me. Then came the whispers. At first, they blended with the rustling leaves, a soft, natural hum. But they grew sharper, more insistent, forming syllables I couldn't grasp. I stopped dead, my ears straining. The sound swelled, circling me, a chorus of voices pressing in from the trees. My pulse hammered in my throat. I spun around, searching for someone, anyone, but there was only emptiness, only shadows. Fear clawed at me, cold and wet against my skin. I stumbled forward, desperate to escape the labyrinth I'd wandered into. The path seemed to warp, leading me in circles, mocking my every move. And then I saw it, a figure in the distance, cloaked in shadow. It stood motionless, its form flickering like a flame caught in a draft. Its eyes glinted, sharp and predatory, pinning me in place. I couldn't move. My legs turned to stone, my breath a ragged gasp trapped in my chest. The figure didn't approach, but it didn't need to. Its presence was enough, a silent threat woven into the air. A branch snapped behind me, loud as a gunshot. I whirled around, heart lurching, but the space was empty. When I looked back, the figure had vanished, leaving only the echo of its gaze. My mind reeled. Was this real? Or was it me? My own brain betraying me, conjuring ghosts from exhaustion and dehydration? I shook my head, forcing the panic down. I had to get out. Focusing on the sun's position, I picked a direction and walked, ignoring the whispers that trailed me like a pack of wolves, ignoring the shadows that darted at the edge of my vision. Hours seemed to pass, though it might have been minutes, before the trees thinned and I stumbled onto a familiar street. My house stood in the distance, a beacon of safety. I hurried inside, locking the door with trembling hands. Water splashed into a glass, and I drank it down, the coolness grounding me as my heartbeat slowed. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, staring at the fading light outside. The woods had been more than a physical maze. They were a mirror of my mind, tangled and treacherous, haunted by the specter of what I could lose. Those whispers, those shadows, they were the thief, taunting me, testing me. But I'd escaped. I'd fought my way back. Physical activity, mental agility, this was the third strategy. It wasn't just about keeping my body strong. It was about training my mind to push through fear, to find a path when none seemed clear. I'd faced the terror of being lost, and I'd won, if only for today. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. I felt a quiet resolve settle over me. There were 2 more strategies to uncover, 2 more battles to wage against the thief lurking in the corners of my memory. The next one, I suspected, might have something to do with what I fed my body, or perhaps how I rested it. But that was for tomorrow. For now, I let the victory linger, a small flame to carry me forward. I woke the next morning with a dull ache behind my eyes, the kind that lingers like an unwelcome guest. The events of the previous day clung to me, the whispers in the woods, the figure in the shadows, the panic of being lost. But I had survived, and that small victory fueled my resolve. I couldn't let the silent thief win. Not yet. I brewed a pot of coffee, the familiar ritual grounding me. As the rich aroma filled the kitchen, I thought about my next move. Curiosity had sharpened my mind, connection had anchored me, and movement had tested my limits. But there was something missing, something fundamental that I hadn't yet addressed. I recalled a conversation with my doctor months ago about the importance of diet for brain health. He'd mentioned omega-3s, antioxidants, and the benefits of a Mediterranean diet. At the time, I nodded politely, but the words had slipped through my mind like water through a sieve. Now, they resurfaced with urgency. Perhaps what I fed my body could be a weapon against the thief. Determined to explore this, I decided to visit the local farmers market. It was a place I'd loved in my younger years, bustling with color and life, but I hadn't been in months. Maybe it was time to reconnect with that part of myself. The market was a riot of sights and smells, stalls overflowing with vibrant fruits and vegetables, the tang of fresh herbs mingling with the sweetness of ripe berries. I wandered from booth to booth, filling my basket with salmon, walnuts, blueberries, and dark leafy greens. Each item felt like a small act of defiance, a way to fortify my mind against the encroaching darkness. Back home, I laid out my haul on the kitchen counter, a colorful array of potential. I wasn't much of a cook, but I was willing to learn. I found a simple recipe for grilled salmon with a walnut crust and set to work. The sizzle of the fish in the pan, the crunch of the nuts as I chopped them, it was meditative, almost soothing. As the meal came together, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the key, the fourth strategy, nourishing my brain with the right foods. I sat down to eat, savoring each bite, imagining the nutrients flooding my system, strengthening my synapses, building a fortress against the thief. But that night, as I lay in bed, the hope began to fray. A strange sensation crept over me, a gnawing emptiness that started in my stomach and spread outward. It wasn't hunger, not exactly, more like a void, a hunger for something I couldn't name. I tossed and turned, trying to shake it off, but it persisted, growing sharper, more insistent. I got up and padded to the kitchen, thinking a glass of water might help. But as I stood at the sink, the emptiness morphed into a craving, a desperate need for something sweet. I rummaged through the pantry, my hands trembling, until I found a half-eaten bar of dark chocolate. I tore into it, the rich, bitter taste flooding my mouth, but it wasn't enough. The craving intensified, a ravenous beast clawing at my insides. I stumbled back to bed, the chocolate wrapper crumpled in my fist. Sleep came in fitful bursts, haunted by dreams of endless corridors lined with doors that wouldn't open, each one hiding something vital I couldn't reach. When I woke, the sheets were tangled around me, damp with sweat. The next day, the craving returned, stronger than before. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my new diet, but it was relentless. By evening, I was pacing the house, my thoughts fragmented, my body restless. I needed something, anything, to fill the void. In a moment of weakness, I ordered a pizza, laden with cheese and pepperoni, the kind of indulgence I'd sworn off. When it arrived, I devoured it, the greasy, salty flavors a temporary balm. But as soon as I finished, guilt washed over me, followed by a creeping dread. Was this the thief's doing? Was it manipulating my desires, sabotaging my efforts to fight back? I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. The room seemed to close in around me, the shadows lengthening, whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. I felt like a puppet, my strings pulled by an unseen hand, my willpower slipping through my fingers. But then a memory surfaced, something my grandmother used to say, "The body craves what the mind fears." It was an old proverb, one I'd never fully understood until now. The thief wasn't just stealing my memories, it was feeding on my fears, twisting my desires to weaken me. I realized that the fourth strategy wasn't just about eating the right foods, it was about mastering my cravings, understanding the connection between my body and my mind. I needed to nourish myself not only with nutrients, but with intention, with awareness. I began to research the link between diet and cognitive health, diving into studies on the gut-brain axis, the impact of sugar on memory, the benefits of intermittent fasting. It was a revelation, a map to navigate the labyrinth of my own biology. Armed with this knowledge, I crafted a new routine. I ate mindfully, savoring each bite, paying attention to how different foods made me feel. I experimented with fasting, finding clarity in the discipline of delayed gratification. And slowly, the craving subsided, the void filled not with food but with understanding. The thief still lurked, of course, waiting for a moment of weakness. But I was learning its tricks, anticipating its moves. I was becoming the hunter, not the hunted. As I sat at my kitchen table, sipping a cup of green tea, I felt a sense of empowerment. There was one more strategy to uncover, one final piece of the puzzle. I suspected it had something to do with rest, with the quiet spaces between action. But that was for another day. For now, I let the warmth of the tea seep into me, a small victory in the ongoing battle. The days grew shorter as autumn crept in, the air crisp with the promise of change. I had come far in my battle against the silent thief. Curiosity had sharpened my mind. Connection had anchored me, Movement had tested my limits, and mindful nourishment had fortified my body. But there was one last strategy one needed to master, one final piece to complete the puzzle. I had a feeling it had to do with rest. Not just sleep, but true, restorative rest. The kind that allows the mind to process, to heal, to rebuild. I'd read about the importance of sleep for memory consolidation, how the brain sifts through the day's experiences, storing what matters and discarding the rest. But my sleep had been troubled for weeks, plagued by restless nights and vivid, unsettling dreams. Determined to confront this final challenge, I decided to create a bedtime ritual. I dimmed the lights, brewed a cup of chamomile tea, and settled into bed with a book, a light novel. Nothing too stimulating. As I read, my eyelids grew heavy, and I felt the familiar pull of sleep. I closed the book, turned off the lamp, and let the darkness envelop me. But sleep didn't come easily. Instead, I found myself in a half-dream state, my mind drifting through a landscape of memories and fears. I saw faces from my past, my parents, my childhood friends, Robert, each one slipping away like smoke through my fingers. The silent thief was there, too, a shadowy figure lurking at the edges, its presence a constant, gnawing dread. I woke with a start, my heart pounding, the sheets damp with sweat. The clock on the nightstand read 3:17 a.m. I tried to calm myself, to slow my breathing, but the fear lingered, a cold weight in my chest. This wasn't just a bad dream, it was a warning. The thief was still there, still waiting for its chance to strike. I knew I needed help. The next morning, I called my doctor and explained my struggles with sleep. He suggested a sleep study, but I hesitated. The idea of being hooked up to machines, monitored like a lab rat, felt invasive. Instead, I asked about natural remedies, ways to improve my sleep without medication. He recommended a few techniques: establishing a consistent sleep schedule, avoiding screens before bed, practicing relaxation exercises. I took his advice to heart, determined to reclaim my nights. I set a strict bedtime, turned off my phone an hour before sleep, and began practicing deep breathing exercises. At first, it was difficult. My mind raced with thoughts, worries about the future, regrets about the past. But I persisted, focusing on my breath, letting each inhale and exhale anchor me to the present. Gradually, I felt a sense of calm wash over me, a stillness that had eluded me for so long. One night, as I lay in bed, I decided to try something new. I imagined a safe place, a meadow from my childhood, with tall grass swaying in the breeze, the sun warm on my skin. I let myself sink into the memory, feeling the peace it brought. And for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply, dreamlessly, waking refreshed and clear-headed. But the thief wasn't done with me yet. A few nights later, I was jolted awake by a noise, a soft, scratching sound, like claws on wood. I sat up, my heart racing, straining to hear. The sound came again, closer this time, from just outside my bedroom door. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold on the floor, and crept to the door. The scratching continued, insistent, almost desperate. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Part of me wanted to retreat, to hide under the covers and wait for morning. But I knew I couldn't. I had to face whatever was out there. I opened the door slowly, the hinges creaking in protest. The hallway was dark, the shadows thick and oppressive. The scratching had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. I took a step forward, my breath shallow, my senses on high alert. And then I saw it, a figure at the end of the hall, cloaked in darkness, its form indistinct but unmistakably there. It didn't move, didn't speak, but I could feel its gaze, cold and unyielding. The air grew heavy, thick with menace, and I knew, without a doubt, that this was the thief, come to claim what it believed was its due. Fear gripped me, but I refused to back down. I had fought too hard, come too far, to let it win now. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength I had left, and spoke into the darkness. "You can't have me," I said, my voice steady despite the terror coursing through me. "I won't let you take my memories, my mind, my life." I've learned how to fight you, and I'll keep fighting, every day, for as long as I have to." The figure didn't respond, but I felt a shift in the air, a subtle change in the atmosphere. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it began to fade, dissolving into the shadows until it was gone. The hallway was empty, the silence broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator. I stood there for a long moment, my heart still pounding, but a sense of triumph welled up inside me. I had faced the thief, confronted it head-on, and it had retreated. For now, at least, I was safe. I returned to bed, the adrenaline slowly ebbing from my system. As I lay there, I realized that the fifth strategy wasn't just about sleep. It was about confronting my fears, about standing up to the darkness rather than letting it consume me. Rest was essential, but so was courage. The courage to fight, to protect what mattered most. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the window, the world outside bright and full of promise. I felt different, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. The thief was still out there, I knew, but I was no longer afraid. I had the tools to fight it, the strategies to keep it at bay. I sat down at my kitchen table, a cup of coffee in hand, and reflected on my journey. Curiosity, connection, movement, nourishment, and courage, each one a piece of the puzzle, each one essential to preserving my mind and my memories. And as I sipped my coffee, I knew that I wasn't alone in this fight. There were others out there, facing the same silent thief, the same creeping dread. But now, I had something to share, a story to tell, a message of hope and resilience. I opened my laptop and began to write, the words flowing easily, naturally. I would share my journey, my strategies, my victories, in the hopes that others might find strength in them. 2. The silent thief might always be there, lurking in the shadows, but I was ready. I had faced it and I had won, and I would keep winning one day at a time.